Okay, so yesterday in 5th period, I mentioned GCF, and they were like, but I learned it forever ago, and then I forgot it because I never thought I'd have to use it again. So I'm hoping that maybe we haven't forgotten everything from 2nd grade, but we'll see. Okay, so what's the abbreviation for greatest common factor? GCF, so we can also say GCF, right? Does anyone know the definition? It doesn't have to be like the perfect math definition, but what does greatest common factor mean? And I'll give it to you in a second, but what does it mean? Well, okay, so think about it. Greatest, biggest, right? Common, something that's the same. Factor. What? What did you just... Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So here's kind of a formal definition. So it's going to be the greatest number or variable, because we're going to look at variables since we're in high school and not in 2nd grade. So the greatest number or variable that is a factor of 2 or more other numbers or terms. Okay, so the greatest number or variable that is a factor of 2 or more other numbers or terms. So in 2nd grade, you literally just looked at 2 numbers. Okay, so in 2nd grade, you looked at 2 numbers. So for instance, you looked at 6 and 18. In 2nd grade, you looked at 6 and 18, and you were asked to find the greatest common factor. So you're looking for the largest number that divides into, or that you can take out of, 6 and 18. Can you all look at that and tell me what the greatest common factor is? 6. The largest number that goes into 6 and 18 is 6. Now, what if you look at that and you're like, I have no idea how you got 6? Okay, let's actually break this down for a second. Y'all remember factor trees? Okay, hold on. Let's break down 6. What multiplies to 6? 2 times 3, right? 2 times 3 would give me 6. I want everyone to write this down, whether you knew that was 6 or not, because this is going to help us as we move into 10th grade GCF. What multiplies to 18?
3 and 6.
3 and 6. Okay, so 3 times 6. And 6 breaks down to 2 times 3. Right? So I'm going to write on a Post-it note. So 3 times 6 gives me 18, and 6 breaks down to 2 times 3. Everyone agree with that? So really, 18 is the same as 2 times 3 times 3. Right? 2 times 3 times 3 gives me 18. Everyone with me? Okay. Now, what do they have in common? These 2 sets of factors, what do they have in common? They have a 2 and a 3. What's 2 times 3? 6. Okay, so the goal is, because you've already passed 2nd grade, that you can look at our terms that we're going to be given and figure it out. But if you need to process through it for a few times, this is the way you're going to break it down. So you're going to break it down as much as you can, and then figure out what they have in common, and that's your greatest common factor. You okay with that? Okay, so what if I give you 25 and 30? What's the largest number that goes into 25 and 30? What's the largest number? 5. Okay, so we're saying that it's 5. I'm going to break it down to be sure. Give me 2 numbers that multiply to 25.
5 and 5.
5 times 5. What multiplies to 30? 6 and 5. And how can I break down 6? Okay, so 2 times 3 times 5, right, which is just 6 times 5, gives me 30. Everyone with me? What do they have in common?
5.
Just a 5. So that is my greatest common factor. We're going basic today because for some reason, when we start factoring, this GCF unit or lesson is the hardest one for everybody. Like we can't figure it out. So we're starting basic today and we're going to go into more detail on Monday. All right, let's look at some 10th grade GCF. Kind of. Okay, you all didn't even know. Okay, so as you're writing this, the ultimate goal would be for you to look at these two terms and tell me what the largest number and how many variables you can take out. Okay, you should eventually be able to look at it and see that. Let's break it down first. Okay, so I'm going to break down 2n to the third. Well, 2 is just 2 times 1, right? So that's just a 2. And how many n's do I have? 3. 1, 2, 3. We're just kind of doing like a factor tree type thing. What does this remind you of? When we like have to break everything down. What's that similar to? What have we done in the past? Radicals, right? We broke everything down. Okay, let's break down 20n squared. Two numbers that multiply to 20. 2 and 10, and 10 breaks down to 2 and 5. So 2 times 2 times 5, or 4 times 5 is 20. And how many n's do I have there? 2. Everyone with me? Okay, what do we have in common? We have a 2 and 2 n's. So my greatest common factor is 2n squared. Some of you are going to be able to look at this instantly and tell me what the GCF is. Some of you are going to need to break it down. Either way is fine. Okay? I do want you to practice breaking it down, so you're going to break down this next one. We're going to keep it simple, and then we'll throw something else in. Okay, so take a second. I want you to break it down, and I want you to tell me what your GCF is. So even if you can look at it, I want you to break it down. So if I break down 2vm squared, so I have a 2, I have a v, and I have 2 m's, right? Okay, I'm going to break down 14vm. 14 is 2 times 7. I have a v, and I have an m. What do we have in common? A 2, a v, and an m. So my GCF is 2vm. Can some of you look at those two numbers and see why it's 2vm pretty quickly? Awesome. You want to try one without breaking it down? Yeah? Okay. If you think you have to break it down, fine. But let's see if you can do it without breaking it down.
Good.
So what is the greatest common factor? So start by thinking, what's the biggest number that goes into 16 and 48? And how many variables can I take out of both of them? Has to be for both. Because if y'all can get this lesson, we are solid for the next 3 weeks. We're going to practice today. So 16 is 8 times 2. 48. So you don't have to I want to hear your answer.
No. 16.
16N? I want to get something different than
I guess you can also plug this into your calculator. You plug 48 and 16 into your calculator. Is that what you did, or did you just
Okay. So some of you said that your GCF is 16N. I did hear 8N. Okay, now that's a factor, right? 8 goes into 16 and 48, but it's not the largest factor. You always want to take out the absolute biggest number. A good way to check is take your smallest number and see if it divides evenly into the larger number, right? Because you know 16 goes into itself, so if 16 goes into 48, you know that's going to be the largest one. And you can kind of work backwards from there, the larger your numbers get. Does anyone need to see this broken down? No?
No.
Okay, how about, you ready for a challenge one? Okay, well, I'm going to give it to you anyway. Here you go. Oh my goodness. Such drama. So it's 5b squared k squared, 25bk squared, and 250k squared. Remember, take your smallest number and see if it divides, because nothing can be greater than your smallest number. And then figure out how many variables you have from there. If you have to break it down, break it down. Okay, I want to process through before we break things down. Because eventually, like if you have a ton of terms, you're not going to want to break down everything and try to figure it out, right? Like eventually you're going to want to be able to look at it. So let's start with the numbers. So I have 5, 25, and 250, right? 250 is a big number. There's a lot of things that go into it. But I'm going to start with my smallest number because I know that it can't be any bigger than my smallest number. What are my factors of 5? 5 and 1, right? So if 5 doesn't go into the other two numbers, then the only number that goes into all of them is 1. Do you understand where I'm coming with that? So does 5 go into 25? Does 5 go into 250? Okay, so that's the largest number that goes into all three. Now, it has to go into all of the terms. Let's look at the B's. Are there B's in all three terms? No. So B cannot be a factor. Okay. Are there K's in all three terms? Yeah? How many K's can I take out? 2. Okay, so let's make sure. Are there 2 K's in the first term?
Yes.
Are there 2 K's in the second term?
Yes.
Are there 2 K's in the third term?
Yes.
That's how you're going to start processing through. Start with the numbers and then deal with your variables. If you need to break it down and circle, do that. Okay, but when we're looking at numbers, take your smallest number and figure out what those factors are and see if it goes into the larger numbers. Do we need to try another one?
No.
No.
Homework?
Yeah.
Okay.